Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here. Week 19 for the 25-26 NBA season is in the books. And to put it lightly, we have had an historical week in the NBA, both on a consistency basis and a single game basis. One has been an absolute talking point for the entire competition and the entire world. The other one slowly slipping on the radar despite a very big significance to it as well. For some teams, again, we're starting to see them really tighten the screws and really start to make some moves, whether that's solidifying themselves at the top or really pushing the bottom end of the conference to be better. Then you've got other teams who continue to be on the slide, and one particular team that was absolutely victimised while being on the slide. A mixed bag, a lot more to that as well, so let's get into it. My Week 19 review for the 25-26 NBA season. We start in the East with the Atlanta Hawks, who moved 3 games above 500 to 34-31. They still remain 9th with a 2-0 record, getting them there where they needed to be. Jalen Johnson, a really nice week for him, and a guy who's going to be in contention for All-NBA selection this year. In his 2 games, 31 points, 8.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1 block on 3 turnovers. 59.5%, 44.4 from deep, and 87.5 from the free throw line. A really efficient week for Jalen Johnson. And the Hawks have been on a nice little run post the All-Star break. They are just trying to really push the envelope at the bottom end of the Eastern Conference. The difference between 6th and 9th right now really is 3 games. So teams really have to be hot on their heels. Same in the 10th seed. The 10th seed, floating at 500 as well. And beyond that, not much happening. So right now, your playing teams are genuine contenders for those lower ranked seedings in the East. Boston with a 2-1 weekly record, along with the return of Jason Tatum, have really fortified their game with a lot of talent that has, come out of nowhere for a lot of people this year. A team that was projected to be an all-star, a playoff team, and obviously I think everyone thought Jaylen Brown was going to have a pretty good year, but I don't think anyone predicted him to have this kind of year, nor the team to have this kind of success. Overall on the week, a 2-1 weekly record, 43-22 to sit second in the East. Derek White with back-to-back good weeks, and again, a guy who I think has to be in all defensive contention this season. 20 points, 5.3 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 0.7 steals and a block on 0.3 turnovers, so that is absolutely crucial. I'd like some more efficiency on the offensive end at 44.7 from the field and 23.8 from deep. 86.7 from the line, that is passable. And if Derek White is going to be this level of player as a third option, considering his contributions on the defensive end, Boston are a sneaky hope in the East. The Brooklyn Nets, they are now 31 games below 500. They're 13th in the conference, 17-48 record, 2-2 this week. Noah Clowney, their best player, 4 games played, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, a steal, 0.8 blocks on 1.8 turnovers, shot 36.6 from the field, 38.1 from deep, 93.3 from the free throw line. They're a bad team. They're not getting better. The Charlotte Hornets, they are a team that has got better, and they, again, were a team that was well below 500, a team that I had all but written off early, and all of a sudden they're sitting in the 10th seed. They are sitting 1 game above 500, so it's 5 games separating them from the 6th seed if they're on a run. 2-2 weekly record, and they have recovered well this season. LaMelo Ball, their best player this week. By no means their best player this year. I think you would have to put him potentially 3rd or 4th on that list behind Brandon Miller, Con Knipple, and Miles Bridges. But he's had a nice week. Not efficient, but a nice week. 21.8 points, 4.8 rebounds, 5 assists, 0.8 steals on 2.8 turnovers, 40.5 from the field, 36.2 from deep, and 100% from the free throw line. I don't know, there's just something about LaMelo Ball. He does it every year. He starts out really hot, he generates a conversation, fades away, somehow fails to get acknowledged, doesn't like it, has a couple of games at the end of the year to remind everybody, and it becomes a vicious cycle. Hopefully, Charlotte can break that cycle this season. Chicago Bulls are 27-38, 11 games below 500. They are done like a dog's breakfast for the season. Trey Jones, 3 games played, 18.3 points, 3.7 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.3 steals, and a turnover. 55.8 from the field, 25% from deep, 66.7 from the free throw line. Matisse Bazelis with a really nice 40 piece. Josh Giddey with a couple of triple doubles. But yeah, the Bulls are done. No one's worried about them, and they are very much moving into next season. Cleveland Cavaliers did go 1-2 this week, a 40-26 record overall, and they remain fourth in the conference. But they have had a nice season. They have recovered really, really well. Certainly not the 64-win Cavs we saw last year, but there is a level of depth to them that is still there. And in a really competitive Eastern Conference, they too are a sneaky chance to try and make it out of the East. James Harden, their best player this week, 23.3 points, 4.7 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. So Harden really embracing that role as a genuine second to third option at times. 53.5 from the field, 44% from deep, 72.7 from the free throw line. They are still presenting well defensively. They are still getting contributions from the bench. Donovan Mitchell is still leading the way, albeit he's probably going to take some hits in the MVP race towards the end of the season. James Harden again chipping in nicely, and someone like an Evan Mobley still sitting there as an all-defensive contender. So they've got a really top-tier front line. Can they manage it with the battle that is the East? Over to Detroit, who have probably had their worst week of the season since the start of it, when all of a sudden everyone thought last year was just a flash in the pan. However, 1-3 and 46-18 overall still tells me they are the number one team in the Eastern Conference. Jalen Duren has had a nice couple of weeks. Cade Cunningham, for me, is still second in the MVP race, but he is starting to get some contenders in the closing stages. The next 4 weeks, 5 weeks are going to ultimately determine where he finishes. I think he's going to be All-NBA first team. I'd have no issues with putting him All-NBA first team. Where he sits in the MVP race is going to be the conversation. But Jalen Duren, again, was an All-Star this year, and understandable why. He had a pretty consistent week. Again, does say a lot, though, that your second option has a week like this, and the team goes 1-3. Clearly indicates there's a slump for the team. 18.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 1.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 1.5 blocks, and 0.8 turnovers. 60.4 from the field, didn't attempt a 3, and 72.7 from the free throw line. Detroit just need to make sure they get a grip on this skid towards the end of the season. The Pacers are now 35 games back from 500, 15-50. They're dead last. They didn't win a game this week. Jay Huff, in the 3 games he played, he has had a nice little resurgence as a defensive centre, really trying to find his niche there in Indiana. 14.7 points, 6.3 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.7 steals on 2.3 blocks with 1 turnover, but it's the inefficiencies from the field. 38.1 overall, 29.2 from deep, and 71.4 from the free throw line. And here's the talking point of the week from an individual standpoint. The Heat went undefeated, 4-0, 37-29. They're trying to top themselves back up in towards that 6th seed and really try and lock the likes of a Charlotte and an Atlanta out of their business. But Bam Adebayo with a huge week, 38 points, 9.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks on 0.7 turnovers, 43.6 from the field is crazy numbers efficiency-wise when you consider 38 a game. 26.8 from deep, again, when you consider 38 a game and the jumpers he's taking, and 85.5 from the free throw line. That number isn't shocking when you consider the man had 83 points against the Washington Wizards. And for me, he showed how broken basketball discourse really is. No one, I think, is going to compare that game to Kobe's 81. And I don't think anyone's ever going to compare it to Wilt's 100. But we've always wanted to see for a number of years now, as these players are starting to rack up these high point totals, what would it look like if a guy stayed in the game and got every point he could possibly get by any means necessary, and then when a guy goes and does it, no one likes it. We can't have our cake and eat it too here. So we need to really make a decision on what we want. At the end of the day, we've just seen the second greatest scoring game in the history of basketball. Or at least in the NBA. No one alive has scored more points in an NBA game than Bam Adebayo. He did it the way that we wanted players to do it, i.e. stay in the game and see how many you can get, by any means necessary. He did it, now no one wants to know about it. The guy had 83 points. Enough said. Over to the Milwaukee Bucks. 1-2 weekly record, officially 10 games below 500. Yibbity yibbita, that's all, folks. Ryan Rollins, their best player this week in the 3 games he played. 14 points, 5 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 4.7 turnovers. And if you thought the low numbers and ball handling was bad, 40% from the field, doesn't help his case either. 36.4 from deep and 100% from the free throw line, so stock standard shooting number there. But yeah, the Bucks are done. Write them off. The New York Knicks with a 2-2 record, they still remain third in the conference, and it is surprising to me that when you look at all the teams being talked about as contenders, i.e. Detroit are certainly good enough to get out of the East, Boston now have the depth, Cleveland now have the depth. The one team that is not being mentioned, despite being a third seed and favoured in the preseason, is the New York Knicks. And that tells me that you've got a hugely underrated roster that is going to surprise a lot of people, considering that, we're talking of conference final level team. Or they are absolutely out-kicking their coverage and they will be no good in the postseason. There's no two ways about it right now with New York. Again, felt they should have been the preseason favourites in the East. Probably under-delivered a little bit. Some teams may have over-delivered, I don't know. But it is damning based on the expectations of the Knicks. Karl-Anthony Towns, their best player this week, though. 24.5 points, 12 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 0.5 steals, 0.5 blocks on 2 turnovers. The numbers that saw him, in my eyes, as an All-NBA player last year. 61% from the field, 42.1 from deep, 85.7 from the free throw line. Again, though, notice the fortunes of the teams riding on Jalen Brunson. That's all I have to say. The Orlando Magic haven't been able to string together consistent weeks of basketball throughout this season, except for the last couple of weeks. 4-0. They are now 8 games above 500. They are also the 5th seed in the East. And a lot of it does come off the back of what Desmond Bane has been doing all throughout this season. You're probably going to see Desmond Bane in an honourable mention as far as all NBA teams are concerned. A guy who has played to an all-star level this year. A guy who has shown time and time again what he can do as a third option when relied upon. And now he's really stepping up to the point where teams are going, well, might be able to have you as a second option. He's done really, really well on an Orlando team that has been ravaged by injuries by their stars, not just in general, which has really hampered their performance. And as you can see, as they're getting healthier, we're seeing what that could have been. Bane on the week, though, 4 games played, 24.3 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.5 steals and 1.5 turnovers, 54.1 from the field, 96.4 from the free throw line. So that stock standard shooting is there, 28.6, not desirable from deep, but a huge performance from Bane this week. Philadelphia, they are a team that should be concerned. That is the best way to put it. They have slipped down to the 8th seed, and you've got teams that are hot on their heels while they are starting to suffer with injury concerns. They're currently, Embiid is out with an oblique concern. Of course, Paul George is out suspended, and Tyrese Maxey now has concerns in his hands to the point where people are worried the league leader in minutes and things of that nature are now not going to make All-NBA first team because they're going to miss significant time. Quentin Grimes, their best player this week. He's been consistently good in their rotation for most of the year. 3 games played, 22 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 1 steal on 2.3 turnovers. Shot 47.7% from the field, 25% from deep, and 82.6% from the free throw line. The guy's been contributing as a solid rotation piece for most of the year. He'll get a decent contract at the end of it. The concern now for Philadelphia is injuries and form out of those injuries as to what that does to their postseason hopes. Another team that has slipped. Philadelphia was one, Toronto is another. They're still 7 games above, but again, they're now into the 7th spot and potentially going to face hot teams in a play-in tournament that could spell the end of what has been a pretty decent season consistently for the Raptors. A 1-3 record this week doesn't help their case. As I said, 36-29, 7 above 500. They are 7th in the Eastern Conference. RJ Barrett, their best player on the week, and a guy who just, he's been there and he's been filling gaps and he's been a relatively good 3rd, 4th option this year, but it certainly hasn't been the RJ Barrett that we saw at times last year when the Raptors were forming this roster. Of course, someone's got to take a hit in the minutes. It just happened to be RJ Barrett. 24.3 points, 6.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 0.5 steals and 0.5 blocks on 1.5 turnovers, 57.8 from the field and 41.7 from deep. The guy is still efficient when he's got possession of the basketball. It is just a matter of him finding that possession when the other guys are hot. 65% from the free throw line. I would like to see that improve. And over to the team that conceded the 2nd most points for an individual player in league history, the Washington Wizards, who are 32 games below 500. 0-3 weekly record. They are 2nd last in the East. And don't be surprised, by the way, if we see another team try and crack a big score against the Wizards. 3 games played for Will Riley, 18 points, 3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.3 steals on 2.7 turnovers, shot 51.4 from the field, 42.9 from deep, and 85.7 from the free throw line. Over to the West, to another team that is not doing anything in the playoffs. Didn't win a game this week. Dallas, 13th in the conference. They are 23 games below 500. Klay Thompson has been a consistent bench player this year for the Mavericks. He's been one of the better sixth men in the league. Unfortunately, the record doesn't show that with Dallas. Klay Thompson, the 4 games, 16 points, 4.3 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.3 steals, 0.3 blocks, and 1.5 turnovers, 37.5 from deep, still showing the prowess from outside, but 43.5 overall and 77.8 from the free throw line. A little bit to be desired. The Denver Nuggets, they are in a very precautious and precarious position right now because I don't think that they can win the NBA championship. And I also think, because of the inconsistent level of play, that Nikola Jokic may cost himself very, very dearly with a second place in the MVP. Based on how I have the MVP rolling right now, he needs to pick up his form. It's the best way I can put it. 2-2 weekly record for the Nuggets, 40-26. There is a logjam of teams around this record in the West. So a good week by one and a bad week by the others will change how this looks. 5th in the conference. Jokic still racking up the numbers, and this has probably been his best performance post-injury, and certainly for me his most consistent week post-injury. 28.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, 11 assists, 2 steals, 0.8 blocks on 5 turnovers, so we're seeing the inefficiencies there. 62.7 from the field and 89.7 from the free throw line, back to those typical outlandish Jokic numbers. 25% from deep, he does need to improve, but again, I don't think Denver can win if Jokic is their best defender, and I think he has been this season. Golden State, 32-33. They've dropped below 500. They have lost 8th position to the LA Clippers, who have been on a tear over the last few months. 1-3 weekly record for them. Injury concerns galore. Role players trying to fill gaps. Golden State are a team in the play-in that is an example right now, and Portland is another, where they're likely to just break 500 or miss 500 and still get a playoff opportunity. That is the absolute flawed system of what this play-in tournament provides. Brandon Przemski, their best player this week, and again, I don't think you're going to get much more out of Przemski. If this is what his role could be off the bench, we're talking about a guy who can make a contending team with their rotations. The problem is he's trying to generate this sort of stuff as a starter. It's not going to work for a team that wants any success. 16.5 points, 6.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 0.3 blocks on 1.8 turnovers, 45.3 from the field. I don't mind 42.9 from deep. He can shoot it, but 60% from the free throw line is showing some inconsistency in his scoring. And again, you're not going to have a guy like this leading you to the playoffs, let alone being a starter on a contending team. Over to the Houston Rockets, and again, another example of these log jams. 40-25 has you 3rd in the conference. 40-26 has you battling to avoid the play-in tournament. That's the kind of year that we're seeing from those second-tier teams in the West, and it's a big part of why those second-tier teams, including Denver right now, are not teams that I think can win the title because of the outstanding performances of an Oklahoma City and the San Antonio Spurs. But the Rockets this week had a record catch-up, so to speak. They have been trailing a lot of teams in games played this year. 5 games this week certainly changes the look on that and certainly brings a bit of balance to the equation. 2-3 weekly record in those 5 games. As I mentioned, 40-25 and 3rd in the conference. Armin Thompson continues to show what kind of player he can be. He is very ball in hand though, and the issue is he doesn't see a lot of the ball in his hand. 21.2 points, 6.4 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.4 blocks on 1.4 turnovers. A guy who I feel can be an all-defensive selection. And a guy who is a key rotation on any contending team. He just doesn't see a lot of the ball. And when you're shooting 62.1 from the field and 40% from deep, you could argue if someone's having an off night, you could probably get him the ball. 71% from the free throw line. A little bit to work on there, but Thompson, the best two-way player for the Rockets. Over to the Clippers, who are now 33-32. They have propelled themselves into the top 8 of the West. They are in enough form that, you know, they can have a bit of a conversation and a battle with a team. 3-1 weekly record this week, and the guy on screen has elevated himself, in my opinion, into all-NBA conversations and certainly into that, you know, elite of the elite conversation when it comes to the end of the season. Again, Kawhi Leonard. We've seen him do it time and time again. This is his best season since he was a member of the Toronto Raptors. I don't think it's his greatest season ever, but it's certainly his best post-Raptors season. 33 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 2.3 steals, and a turnover this week. 58.1 from the field, 39.1 from deep, 90.2 from the free throw line. And the consistent comparisons to second three-peat Michael Jordan just continue to appear. And we've seen it all of Kawhi's career. It's just a shame that we didn't get this Kawhi Leonard for 10 years. I'd be concerned for all-time rankings if we got this Kawhi Leonard for 10 years. Over to the Lakers. They sit fourth in the conference, 40-25, again in that logjam of teams with a 3-1 weekly record. They are performing nicely. There is a guy who's missing from that, so other guys are getting touches and the team is flowing. I'll let you work out what happens when LeBron James isn't on this squad. Luka Doncic, 4 games played, 34.3 points, 9.8 rebounds, 6.8 assists, 2.8 steals, and 0.8 blocks on 4 turnovers. 48% from the field, 36.5 from deep, and 80% from the free throw line. The only real gripe I consistently have with Luka, because trying to get star guys to play defense in the modern game doesn't happen. It's not a gripe, it's just a fact. It doesn't happen. But it's the inefficiency with the amount of offensive possession that he gets that does hurt him and does overall hurt his team. I understand the high turnovers. He's a high possession guy. What I don't get is a guy that takes so many shots. He almost takes 50-50 split of 2s and 3s. He's not 50% at either, let alone consistent. Well, he's not 50% at one, being the field goals. He's not 40% being the other. And he gets to the free throw line more than anyone else and doesn't shoot at least 85%. If you chew those efficiencies on Luka Doncic, you're looking at a completely different scenario for the Lakers and previously for the Mavericks. The Grizzlies, well, they are Grizzly. 18 games below 500. Didn't win a game this week, 0-3, and they are 11th in the conference. As I said, 18 below 500, 23 and 41 overall. GG Jackson in 3 games played, 15.7 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 1.5 or 0.3 steals and 0.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. 44.4 from the field, 23.1 from deep, 57.1 from the free throw line. Yeah, not a great week there for the Memphis Grizzlies. Different scenario for the Minnesota Timberwolves. They have put themselves in that logjam of teams as well. A team that could be realistically a 3 seed right now is currently a 6th seed. And we're seeing that with the Rockets, the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the Timberwolves. All these teams could very well be a 3rd seed. But it's half a game separating all of them. 6th in the conference, Anthony Edwards, not with a great week. In fact, he had one of his worst games as a pro this week, particularly shooting the ball. Just some inconsistencies there. 4 games played, 26.5 points, 2.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.8 blocks on 2.8 turnovers, 46.8 from the field, 40% from deep, and 89.5 from the free throw line. Now, I want to clarify when I say that Minnesota can sneak games compared to saying someone like a Denver can't win a title. I don't expect Minnesota to win a title. I don't think Houston can win a title. I don't think the Lakers can win a title. I don't think they have anyone good enough to carry them to that position. Denver do. The problem is that their best player is not as good a defender as he is offensively, and the rest of the team isn't as good defensively to make up for that. Someone like Minnesota has enough rounded game that they can sneak a series or 2 to get to a conference final, and they can do that against teams like a Denver. I think they can still do it. Again, they're going to have to really tighten the screws in the last 3 to 4 weeks this season. Over to New Orleans, 3-1 weekly record this week, 22-45 overall. They are still not making the playoffs. And a guy who has flown under my radar personally over the last couple of weeks, Dejounte Murray, back and playing basketball, which is really good to see. And unfortunately, not covered by the national media, despite the fact he was one of many players who have been all-star level players over their career to tear their Achilles. And he has come back and made a pretty decent impact for the Pelicans. Trey Murphy, 4 games played this week, their best player. 23.8 points, 5.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 2 steals, and half a block on a turnover. 49.1 from deep, 53.1 from... 49.1 from the field, 53.1 from deep, 88% from the free throw line. Just imagine if they had managed to have Dejounte Murray just there to try and help steer the ship a little bit this season. On the other side of things, you have the Oklahoma City Thunder, undefeated 2-game record, 51-15. First in the conference, the first team since those Warriors teams to win 50 of their first 65 games. And then you've got Gilgeous-Alexander, who has all but locked up the MVP for this season with huge performances throughout the week. And again, it comes down as well to efficient performances. Shea for the week, I know it's only a 2-game sample, but 31 points, 7 rebounds, 10 assists, a steal and a block with 2 turnovers. So the guy's averaging 10 assists on 2 turnovers while still scoring the basketball at 31 a game on 55.6 from the field. Now he's 36.4 from deep I would like to see his 3-point percentage go up, but he does so much efficiency-wise, let me get that out, from 2-point range that he doesn't need to bail himself out with 3-point shots. Adding the fact that he knows how to draw a foul, he gets to the line and converts. You've got the most valuable player in the NBA right now, and a guy who is on a LeBron Jordan clubhouse. He's looking for that clubhouse. We'll explain that when the playoffs turn around. The Phoenix Suns turn things around as well. 38-27, a 3-1 record for them. Devin Booker with a really nice week as well. And Phoenix just doing enough as a playing team. You know, they're the only playing team I'm comfortable with right now that I think can hold out their position. I would not be confident as the 8th seed in the West if I'm the Clippers, but I am also the form team there compared to a Golden State and a Portland. So, you know, we're starting to see the formation of what this conference could look like. If I'm Phoenix, I'm comfortable where I'm at. If I'm the Clippers, I'm feeling comfortable where I'm at. I don't know about Portland, and we'll get to them, and I certainly don't know about Golden State. But Devin Booker this week, again, really consistent. A guy who's done this for we're going on nearly 10 years in the league, but hasn't had the recognition because he's Devin Booker. It's really simple. 29 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2.8 turnovers. 44% from the field, not ideal, but 37.5 from deep has consistently been a 35-36% three-point shooter. Still a threat consistently, and 94.1 from the free throw line. So Phoenix can get themselves and remain healthy. They might be able to boost their record, and who knows, maybe a team slips towards that 6th seed and just comes a cropper, so to speak, against the Phoenix Suns. Portland Trailblazers, a 1-2 weekly record, 31-35 overall. Because they are so clear-cut ahead of the 11th and 12th seed, I have no issues with them making the play-in, but they're not hitting enough form, and their top players aren't performing enough for me to be absolutely sold that they would do anything but make up a spare game or two at the end of the year. And again, this is the flaw that I do have with the play-in tournament. If a team is clearly below 500, what are we doing? If a team is above 500 and they just happen to be clearly games below the team in 8th, what are we doing? I get it if we have some ties going on, and I get the relevance of it because all of a sudden you've now got a sponsored playing tournament and you've got extra games and extra revenue to generate for the league, but it's not really pertinent to the competition itself. The Blazers might end up being an example of that. They did get to 500, everyone broke away, they fell apart. It happens in the season. A 1-2 weekly record, 31-35 overall. I think they've outkicked their coverage from last season. 10th in the conference, and Jeremy Grant, their best player on the week. 22 points, 2.3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.7 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. Efficiency is there. Again, performance overall is not. 55.9 from the field, 52.9 from deep, and 82.6 from the free throw line. Sacramento, they're 35 games below 500. Split the difference at 2-2 this week. 15th overall in the conference. Russell Westbrook, the guy that almost didn't make a roster, proceeded to post a triple-double this week and still remains consistently, for me, their best player this year. 19.3 points, 6.7 rebounds, 10.3 assists, a steal and a turnover on the week. 45.2% from the field for Russ, 46.7 from deep is an eye-opener, and 76.5 from the free throw line. Russell Westbrook is good for this league and good for basketball. I just wish that he could get on a contender. Speaking of contenders, this is a team that is starting to shake, rattle and roll and really starting to push their case as the second championship favourite in the NBA. The San Antonio Spurs, undefeated this week, 48-17, second in the conference. And the big talking point around that, Victor Wembanyama. He did play in all their games, and he had a monster week. 33.3 points, 11.3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.8 steals, and 3.8 blocks. Getting it done on both ends, and getting it done with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander efficiency. 1.8 turnovers, 55.1 from the field, 46.2 from deep, and 82.9 from the free throw line for a guy who is at least 7'5". Victor Wembanyama, for me, has had a better season right now than Nikola Jokic. Victor Wembanyama, for me, right now, is the best center in the NBA on a team that could win a title in just his 4th season. Good luck. And after all of that, we turn over to the Utah Jazz, who are 26 games below 500, split the difference this week at 2-2, and a 14th overall. Bryce Sensabaugh, their best player this week, 20.7 points, 4 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2 turnovers. 50% from the field and 43% from deep. Promising signs for a Utah Jazz team that could be nice next year. But 50% from the free throw line. There are a lot of things that are free, and that is the games people are playing against Utah. I'm not saying they're in the tank, but they are a fish with a filter. And that has been me, guys. That is my review for Week 19 of the 25-26 NBA season. You can see how things are panning out. Some things are log jamming more than others, but we still have a lot of basketball to go, and there are some intriguing matchups and some intriguing potential left in this season. What do you think the season has done so far? Who do you think is, really up there as a player? Has anyone surpassed your expectations? Has anyone fallen by the wayside? What do you think? Hit like, hit subscribe, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. That has been me, guys. That has been my Week 19 review for the 25-26 NBA season. I'm out.